Hang on a second. Petra, it says that your microphone is muted.
There, can you hear me now? we have to keep the blonde factor in consideration.
Oh, is that that's one of the most used
Always.
most used sentences recently is you have to take yourself off mute.
Usually I think my children would love me on mute.
Oh no, they wouldn't.
How are you, Iestyn?
I'm all right, thank you very much. Just sort of doing things, and bookings are coming in.
Really?
Well, yeah, I mean, I believe them because my act is so interactive that it's still not the same for me as somebody just standing on the stage and doing things, because I go in among and I get people on the stage and we have to make physical contact in one of the things. So I'm having to see if I can maybe wear a visor and gloves and put gloves on the solos, because I do the scarf part of the skit and I teach 3 men out of it, the audience, the thing, and so that's
I see. But how is the audiences now? Are you allowed to have audiences?
We are just hearing. So the first ones I've been booked for, where I don't do that because it's for a more elderly audience, will be June. But the Brighton Festival also is saying, can you come here? Can we work around it somehow? So we're waiting. But the Hippodrome has booked me to do my book talk, which will be on the roof. Magic Mike Live is in the basement main area. I'm going to be on the roof. So
okay.
Like starting at the top and working your way down.
Okay.
So we'll see.
But tell me a little bit about this act of yours, because it sounds wonderful. I've seen a little bit about that, but
thank you.
And what?
Well, Michael Nunn said it's an idea gone bonkers. Basically, long story short, I saw ballet for the first time ever when I went to sell programs at the Royal Opera House, as I went to train as an opera singer at Guildhall. So I was at Guildhall with Bryn Terfel and Claire Rutter. I mean, but I saw ballet and I hankered. One, it all looked familiar, and something I used to know and I'd forgotten, and here it was back again. And I know all sorts of Russian things that I can't know, but I do. It's quite peculiar. And I hankered to be Odette O'Deal. I can't explain it. I had to be that. And everything in the way of me being that, I took out of the way. And so first I just learned the steps. And then the mime, I learned I'm the Queen of the Swans from an ex-ballerina who was my boss. And then she worked out I could do steps. And so I mean, I'm 18 and I weighed 19 stone now. And so I was and a comedy producer saw one of my lessons going on in the foyer and said, I guarantee you will do that as an act one day. And so I danced at first, and then I started to come out with bits of interview things. And then we had the idea of a boy who was supposed to have come over with Madame Galina from Russia. And then I had various versions of interaction, a bit, but mainly dancing, a bit of talk, and then, it snowballed. And then when I went to Iraq the first time, 2006, Rod Gilbert, who's one of our biggest stand-ups here, he was there, and he has a fantastic eye for structure. And he basically, while bombs are dropping, and I helped him with method acting, he redid the comic structure. He said, you can't set up a punchline for 2 payoffs. You've got to have this here. You can't do that. Nothing's in the passive tense. You've got to walk into them. Get the 3, And so I still do. After 2 nights in Iraq, we worked out what I was going to do. And I still do that to this day because it worked and I've left it. So that's how it just went from plain dancing to a bit of talk to now this full boys on stage, sort of like a pantomime game.
Yeah, but and you are actually a trained singer.
Yes, I've gone back to that now. That's another complication in my life, because I was doing I was always singing, but not as I am now. I've been retrained over Zoom, you know, with my phone tilted against the spare Hoover, again down in the utility room above the tumble dryer. My singing teacher's in Germany, and so this morning I've been doing Sarastro and Odette O'Deal practice and writing my new play. So it's a put one box on the head, go to the next thing. It is just, you know, so that's what I've been doing.
Is this because of lockdown that you went back to singing?
No, it happened before. Claire Rutter, and Peter Wedd are starting really in Wagner. So their agents just said, right, there's a Wagner show, listen to me, a Wagner performance going on in Scotland. And we'd like you to do it. It's with a very nice orchestra. It gives you a chance to do. And they couldn't find a hunding. And so Claire put on Facebook, who wants a lesson to see where we are? And I was always singing. She was in my year. So I had a lesson with her and she corrected something. And so they cast me as Hunding, unheard. And I had the biggest imposter syndrome ever. So for example, when we talked to the press, when we got there for the dress rehearsal, they said to all of us, what was your last big sing in public? And so Peter Wed's he'd been called to Covent Garden for the Tristan. Claire had done Aida for Opera North. And I said, oh, 5 fake Welsh songs for the Kesgrave WI wearing my most beaded tutu. And they're looking at me like, what is this? And so I said, no, it's true. That's what I did. And Peter Wedd, the Siegmund, he said, I offer you something. You don't sing down into yourself properly. You know, your singing voice must not be where your speaking voice is. So for 3 days in the digs between the dress rehearsal and the first night, I had 3 hours to 4 hours singing lessons per day on 2 phrases of Hunding. Du labtest in and heilig ist mein. And so when I got back then on the first day, we did Hunding's Curse. The conductor stopped conducting and said, what? And I said, that's 3 days with Peter. So I'm still learning with him. So that's what happened. So it's been great consolidating during this period, you know, because going on stage means that I use my voice more like this, and it's nothing like my singing voice. And so that's been a confusion. So it's been good to not talk, and particularly not talk on stage. The voice is more settled in now.
Okay, that's very interesting. And these different creative things that you're doing, so when the lockdown started in England, how were you affected then by that? Were there suddenly a stop for you, or were there still you could do something?
Sorry to interrupt. There were it stopped almost dead. I've been very lucky because I'd sort of planned that I could write the second book that was due in that period anyway. And Rob, I was, as usual, being thrown on last minute in something someone cancelled. And I'm very useful because I'm not like anything else on God's green earth. So therefore, I'm not going to clash with another variety act at all, including my own. And so they say, right, we'll get everywhere that I've got into, or the West End, it was, let's get Galena in last minute. And then the owners have been in and they've said, book that as much as you can. So that's how my career's been. And so I was put in the Pelargoni Club in Zante. Fabulous. Oh, I loved it. And it was for Rob de Bank's house party. He started festival. So I already had live bookings for Christmas. He gave me 40 extra corporate shows. And so my fuerte leg died on me, but I had money to tide me over. So I sort of planned the book. And then COVID just happened anyway. So I was writing, but everything like the nice talks and touring the book show stopped dead. It just went, we can't have you, anybody in the WI, the theatres, all of it just stopped, which was, but then I'm lucky I did have the book to write. A lot of my friends, just everything stopped, nothing going on, which has been very tricky.
So this stop in this quiet time, do you think it made you write indifferently, or you know, that there weren't not many distractions, so it was
Yes, because what you have time, I think what I had to do was make sure I wasn't writing more sketches, and really, I read a lot of travel writing, even though my book is a travel book, the one about Iraq. For me, I hadn't read much travel, and it's that way of really, as Jack Kerouac says, to stare into something. I've learned to do that, not just the funny things I overheard on the bus. What did it look like out of the window of the bus? The weather, smells, touch, taste, all of those, to really rewrite things as short stories, to stare into them. And also another wonderful Jack Kerouac thing is to always be amazed at what you've seen, because otherwise you can't, if you that's how you get it across to other people, that, oh, this is wonderful, I'll describe it. And I'd never really thought of that. You know, that's the Galena is like that. I think that's why that's gone so far, because of my joy in it. I still have total joy when my Giselle music starts, and I love it. I become very childlike apparently, because the character's very vampy. But you know, I did it in Cape Town, and one of the big comedians in Cape Town said, the most childlike joy happens when the music comes on, and then you go back to being this absolute nightmare woman, because it's based on Makarova. Don't tell me. Oh, I told everyone. I sneaked in to watch Makarova rehearsing, and I thought, oh my goodness. I mean, the way she used to shout at people, get her away from me, why is she near me? And then she turned around to say, I've really kept my figure, haven't I, boys? And I think that is astonishing. Shouting at someone, not giving her enough stage room, and then look at my figure, stuff like that. That's how I started with the speaking.
Okay, yeah.
So it's really just to, it's, I've, without meaning to, I've learned to impart more clarity. That's what it has, because a lot of people can't understand what on earth I'm talking about most of the time. And so it's to make sure people do, otherwise they're not having a night out.
Yeah.
I've sort of turned that around on itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Really looking at, listening to, what does it feel like, smell like, taste like, the senses.
But it's wonderful if you say you are childlike, you know, when you get into that role.
Yeah, the dance bit, not the rest of it, the dance bit. I mean, it's
the dance bit, yeah.
I mean, because you have to, in a way, you have to cocoon it, that, because, I mean, doing the Café de Paris on a Saturday night, it's a lot of drunk people from Essex, and it's really me versus them, you know, and I'm always going to win. And there's, and in the Iraq and Afghanistan, of course, you've got in the middle of nowhere in these bases and the war zones, if they take a Ginyu, it's like a pack getting you. And so I've always felt that the childlike thing has to be there, but then when you've mentioned it, I've always got a cocoon, right? It's protected because of that going on. There are two definitely, like a Dalek with the sensitive thing inside the case. It's that idea. So I've been really analyzing. Sorry, that's how I've come out with that. I've been analyzing a lot during lockdown. How does it work? What is it? The act. Why does this particular thing work? And why does it work? For example, because one of the places I'm Scandinavian countries, they go mad for it. I've never been encored anywhere other than Denmark and Finland. They demanded the scarf party again, wouldn't let us go off stage. That's never happened anywhere else. I had a gas fitter on stage in Denmark, and the audience went nuts. And in Finland, I got someone on stage who couldn't speak English, and so someone had to translate as I was talking to the guy I had on the stage.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So I was accusing them of not translating correctly, and that turned into a whole thing. Like, what did you say? Why is he doing this as your fault? You know, that kind of. So that's.
That's amazing.
Really writing these things down about why.
Yeah.
Who, what, when, where, why.
Yeah, but that's wonderful. This is why I'm thinking, you know, the quiet time and the time where there's no rush, really. You know, that we sort of, we can reflect a little bit more and think about these things. And the fact that you say this childlike acting or the dancing, But I also think this is this might and maybe you will get what I'm saying. I think sometimes this is also the fact that we are now a bit more isolated and not being able to compare ourselves the whole time with people around us. It brings out more a trueness, and a trueness, I think, for artists, for example. And this childlike thing that you're talking about, I think this I think artists need that, because I think your most natural time of being an artist is when you're a child, when it comes out naturally. And then, of course, in the time you are trained and the time you have all these influences around you, it shapes you in that way. But I think the character, or the core of the artist, is really that child who starts this art, or who finds the joy in it. And
Yes.
like you say, that first moment when you saw the ballet, and that feeling that you had inside you, is probably that feeling that you are now projecting, and this is why the audiences are so enjoying that, you know.
One hopes. I think you're right. It is that thing of, it amazes me, therefore it hopefully will amaze them.
Yes.
That whole yes, I do. And it's the lack of comparison, and the sort of comforting thing is that not only am I not getting any work, no one's getting it. You know, I'm not singing Hunding at Bayreuth. No one's singing Hunding at Bayreuth. You know, that's a bit, it's an odd thing to say, but it's also true. No one is doing it.
Yeah, and it's almost in a sense reassuring. That also sounds strange, but it's almost reassuring to think, you know what, it's not just me. Because normally in most times of our lives, things that happen to us just to us, to yourself. But now, in the sense, you think the next person you walk across in the street is really in almost a similar situation. And I think this is something we've never experienced before.
No, and it's on mine, it's two tiers, because the other people living here, so I live in the middle of nowhere in Portnet. So he's moved out now, but my saving grace in lockdown has been my new neighbour, who's now done his year contract, Oliver, who's a builder. He's a triplet and a maths genius. And he was able to work because he's a builder on his own, so he could go out. And this side is he works at the power station, so he has to go to work. So in a way, I was the only one here of that type, and so that was tricky, seeing that they were always able to go out to work. But Oliver, because we bubbled, Oliver would see me wandering around first thing from my walk, you know, say looking a bit like, you remember Lady Macbeth, because he'd sit out at school, watch the sleepwalking scene, and he would just say to me, "You're looking bedraggled. Do you want to come to work?" And he would take me building with him, which saved my bacon. And apparently I was all right, because I'm so impractical. He says that he has to explain everything, but I also, unlike his labourers, don't think I know what I'm doing. I don't speak to the clients knowledgeably, which drives him mad. I don't smoke in sheds, and I don't think I know what I'm doing, and trying to advise him. And he literally had to tell me, "Don't pick that up with the lid loose, or the stuff will fall out of it." And he said, "You know, the other day, someone did that. A labourer working for me did that, and just screws, nails, the whole lot was on the floor." And he said, "I thought of you, that you would never have done that. You never tipped wheelbarrows over. You didn't overload the wheelbarrow. You didn't sort of say to the people, you should have an extra flower bed over there and put stuff in." He said, "I stand there with my labourers thinking, would you shut up? I'm in charge here. They haven't asked you." Just that kind of, so that was quite, that he did save my baby. But he used to have magical things, talking of the child, because he said, "You point out things to me I'd never thought of looking at." Because I couldn't use a trowel, I hated a trowel. So when we were doing aggregating and topsoil, I did it with my bare hands. So I was covered in this stuff, earthed, loving it. And then as I stood up, the trees had gone black silhouette, and the blue moon had risen behind them. In Suffolk, this is in the country. And I just said to him, "Oh my goodness, that's irreplaceable magic. Look at that." And he just said, "Gosh, I'd never thought of looking at that on my own." And that happens so many times with him. Twilights in the country with moon coming up and all of these things. So I sort of taught him in two ways, by pointing out things to him, and I taught him some Mark Twain wisdom, because he tried not to make me do really big things. But one day there was a day early, a delivery of these huge, great paving slabs, which he was, oh no, because it was in the way of the traffic and everything. And he's looking at me and said, come on, we'll do it. And he said, I don't expect you to this. I said, no, we're doing it. It's here, we're doing it. So I'm carrying these things. And he would start with the small ones. And I said, don't start with the small ones, start with the big ones. He said, but I said, no. Mark Twain said this. If your job is to eat a frog, eat the frog first thing in the morning. And he said, how's that got to do with the slabs? I said, wait, if your job is to eat more than one frog, eat the biggest frog first. Okay. Biggest slabs over there first. And he's now remembers that. He does the big stuff he doesn't want to do first. For me, that would be a bit like doing Odil's variation and the fouettes before I've done nice swan.
But this is amazing. But this is you're an artist, and this is why you think like that. You know, this is my point. This is my point the whole time. Like if more people study art, then the world will be such a wonderful, interesting place, because people will think differently.
Yes, they will.
And you've just proven my point here.
I actually haggled with the dentist, because the dentist, I'm having dental problems, so I am stressed. I mean, it's not all fun, because there are definitely stress things that are coming through. And so with the dentist tried to charge me extra for the extra PPE they have to put on. And I said to them, no, you're not doing that. That's on you. I don't charge the Hippodrome extra on the corporate nights because I go there wearing my biggest, most beaded tutu. That's on me. And they were so stunned, they let me have it at a cheaper price.
Really?
Yeah, they did. I just thought, I'm turning into my mother. My mother haggles for everything. And I thought I just haggled money off the dentist.
Oh, Iestyn, you are so lovely. This is great. Oh, wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, so lockdown for you was really a very interesting time, you would say.
It was because of various, I mean, I did blurt out to Oliver, my neighbour.
Yeah.
This is, I just said, I'm so missing the stage. I'm going to say this, I'm just this. And he said, bear in mind, it's not your fault. There's nothing you can do about it. It was the most, that's so true. There is nothing I've been able to do about all this. Whether, I know there's the whole thing about the Greek gods and they liked when people didn't obey them and ran at walls and did all these things. And that's a bit, the feeling inside is, I wish this was better. I wish this could be taken away and I want to do this. But you just can't. But you still rail against it. I think the gods don't respect you if you don't rail against your fate. I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
But I've been railing.
Okay. But so tell me, do you think now your act, have you thought also about the act? Are you going to now, when you get back, and are there things that you've changed? Do you think there's something during this time that you will change in the act, or that you gained? Can you see a positive?
I can see a positive in that, and the editor of my written stuff has seen this as well, that the more that I said to you, the descriptive things, staring into things, being amazed at what you see and putting it across, he says there's a better eye, he says the thing about you is that you do have a terrific eye for detail. Sometimes you don't write the word order correctly, and you have baronesses, which is things that are not needed, travel, anything like that, you know, just straight into the scene. You do that wrong sometimes, but your eye for detail has got better, and there's more sight, sound, taste, touch, all of that is coming into the more of the Madame Galina shtick as he's hearing it, details. But I mean, that's interesting because that's from Germany. When I did a Zoom show, and Germans love our variety, so there were a lot. My friends are in Glücksburg, and so they were translating the German comments for me about pacing and about aspects of it. But my favorite was that because I did a sound check earlier in the day and then the sun moved. And so I was blinded and had to move. And one of the Germans wrote, and suddenly when he was challenged by the sun, we saw a most interesting background kitchenette. And I thought, that's a fabulous way of describing that. And so that's gone in. And I say that to myself. And then I move that into my descriptions. What did really happen? Not how you tell it. It's the show and don't tell. What actually happened? The sun moved, I had to move. You can now see the kitchen behind me. So it's what is really happening. I've gone with that. Even in the present on stage, what is really happening? React. I mean, I've always done that because you have to react to everything that happens going on. With Raw Marines in the Helmand province, I noticed this with an act. They heckled him. He didn't have a put down. That was it. End of his act, and I was up next. And so if you don't react as you're going and in the immediate present, you're finished with them. That taught me that, and I wrote that down, and I thought, why did you remember that story? And I realized it's because of what's happening now. That feeds into what is really going on. What are we watching? It's that. So that's really those things that because I have time, as you say, I am uniting those in my head. So that stray thought there goes with that thought, and I see how it goes together. So I've been doing a lot of that, wandering around.
That is so interesting. That and that's so true that you know that this is almost like a how we should see this time.
Yes. Yeah. It's the time to step back, to have a rest as well. I was shattered. My left leg. I mean, that's one of the things that's going to be different on stage. I've taught myself again to do don fuetes on my right leg. I've really worked at those. So I'm going to be able to not have to do them always left leg. That's a trivial thing, but for me it's important because I'm 56 tomorrow. So the other things are development, clarity as well. And I've got that, and also just having singing lessons and not talking because of the difference in my singing voice and speaking voice. It's easier to do because I don't talk to people much at all at the moment. And I'm actually thinking about that when I go back out there and having to give myself that minute to really let the voice go down for singing because it's that deep. So all of those things come into play on how will it go on next on stage? How will I do it? And it does take a long time, I'm finding, to pluck the various things out, to put my voice on the track every day, to which version of the play am I going with, putting that on there, the various memories and the various getting old. I feel that I've aged a lot during this year because I've got to 55 when your gums shrink. I'm turning into my grandmother who was neurotic. I literally am. I mean, because when this started, when I had to replace someone, I can't remember, but he was just out of college, you know, as a singer out of college. And I thought, gosh, just wait till you get to my age, you know, you won't be cancelling because of that. You'll be cancelling because you've got a malaise going on. My grandmother, I now understand what she meant, where she just said, I would go upstairs, I'd get into bed, I'd turn to the wall and I'd just will myself to die. And then she came out with a classic line, she said, except it would take a long time and I will not stoop to a commode. You know, I would. Beethoven had a potty on his piano. I'm not proud. It's just that's another thing that's going to come into the stuff. Well, it's coming into the new play because from nowhere, having finished a draft of my book, sent it to my agent, the lines for the play dropped into my head. The opening line of each act just dropped in from nowhere, and I knew what the story was. It's just like, thank you so much, universe. And I've just been now writing that from nowhere. That has been
wonderful.
It is. I'm so lucky. I mean, it's based on reality because I'll tell you this, that my great mate in the services, he's now left, he's a Royal Marine. We hated each other at first. I met him when I sang for Her Majesty and the Duke of Edinburgh on the HMS Victory. So I had lovely publicity last weekend because it came out that I'd sung his favourite song to him years ago. So I got some, I didn't even have to try for column inches. I got radio interview. Hurrah.
Yeah.
And I met this Marine. Why are you late? Really shouty. And we've become friends now. But he's gone into close protection and intelligence spying. And I was going out to perform for, as he said, the wrong Prince of Saudi. And those shows stopped, and we didn't know why. And Stax, this Royal Marine, ex-Royal Marine, phoned me first thing in the morning and said, do you want to know why your gig's finished? Do you think I didn't know you were going to the Seychelles? I said, oh, he said, I asked you not to do that. And he said, the Crown Prince called his brothers together, including the one I was gigging for, and made them account for where the money was going. And so on this account of this wrong brother had been that he has 2 theatres in his place in the Seychelles, you know, not 1, 2, and that he had a burlesque act and a drag laying hands inappropriately on decent Muslim men. And Stack said to me, you are so asking for a fatwa. So, but it stopped anyway, and that's what the play's based on. What if I did put myself in mortal danger right now? So nothing is wasted. So that's all nuts. Sorry, that was just a way of how real life, you know, something in real life. This happened a while ago. As this filtered through and filtered through and filtered through, and suddenly here's the story. It's just the subconscious has written it for me while I'm doing other things. Like the elves and the shoemaker. When it's like me getting up the shoemaker in the morning, and the elves have made the shoes for me. It's really like, oh, here it is, and I'm just catching it.
Yeah,
I like that.
It's amazing that your mind is working like that. You know, that all comes to you, and you know, you can recycle it almost like and putting it in the story.
I think everyone does that if they're honest. I think writers hardly make anything up. They just move around. They organize, arrange what they've seen, heard, lived through. I think most of them do. So that's another interesting thing.
But Iestyn, you mentioned something now that before about the dentist, going to the dentist and being charged for these things. Do you think that artists are being valued, that the public really understands what it is to be an artist and how much effort and dedication goes into, say, for example, your act?
No, they don't. Because I think one question I was never asked when I sang Hunding was, yes, but what's your day job? But I'm asked that all the time on the variety circuit. I mean, the amount of work for every 30 seconds of stage time as Madame Galena, for just one example, I've got a bibliography of 14 books. I've researched that much. And so, and the thousands and thousands and thousands of gigs doing it, and you know, they don't. It's absolute slog around, the exhaustion of it, you know, not earning that much money from it, training, Guildhall training, all of it. They don't get it. Then they're not supposed to get it, though, are they? I suppose they're not. But they're not. We're not talking Russia, where they think of how they're valued in Russia. My goodness, just for one example, think how they're valued there. That when they when the Germans advanced on, they went and guarded, the peasants went and guarded Tolstoy's house. They made sure they didn't overrun Tolstoy's house. That wouldn't happen here, for one example. It wouldn't happen in London. They wouldn't care, you know. It wouldn't stop them going to bomb Dickens's house. But that happened in. So maybe we should all move to Russia, because they certainly value them. They certainly value them more. But you hear that the way they went to ballet in Russia, for one example, they're just, you know, with the prices that everyone could go to it, because when Peter the Great imported it, of course, his boyars and the peasants were in it. So that it's never that snob thing that it has really to a certain extent here. So everyone went to the ballet in Russia. Here they certainly wouldn't dream. I mean, my little thing for Channel 4, which is where I met Michael Nunn and Billy Trevitt, the ballet boys, that was going around asking people would they go to the ballet, and most of them wouldn't. They didn't go to the arts, wouldn't go to galleries, join a library, any of that. It's not valued because people don't do it. But Jessie Norman, you know, she did she showed the research on one of her big interviews that children who excel in arts topics at school excel in all the other topics as well. There is such a marked evidence for that.
But this is why I feel strongly that we should start talking about this, about the education system, and saying, you know, children should be able to do art as a subject in school alongside maths and science, and that art should be seen as an important subject and not just as a side thing or an afternoon after school. And I mean, I know a little bit because I lived in the UK as well, and I know a little bit about the art schools there, but that's something you go to. So for instance, okay, ballet school you go to when you're 11, and that's a specialized school, but these schools are also very expensive, so not everybody can afford to go, and they're very exclusive as well. So there's only at White Lodge about 120 children doing ballet, so it's very exclusive, and you think there must be so many more children being able to do it. And not it's not also that you think everybody who takes art or who plays an instrument has to become a musician, but to give them this exposure and to give them this development is so important, I think.
It is. There are two things that I went out for start. Henry Fletcher, who you should cover, the one who's built the cairn. Both him and his girlfriend, she's half German, so she's here at the moment. They gave up playing their instruments because they kept being told, well, you're not going to make a career of it. That's not, you know, neither are most people, you know. And then there was another 3 boys here who all played an instrument, and their mother was sort of, and everyone thought she conned people because she taught them up so much, and they bought her a piano in the society here, the rich. And I said, how did she con you? Did you not hear them play? They're not good enough to have big careers. But so in that, there are 2 things there, that sort of con thing they thought was going on, but also you can do it for leisure. But then going back to the Russians, Ulanova, after one of her Juliets, had to have her costume on over her coat. She had to get dressed before the curtain call because she had to go back and help on the farm. You know, and Birgit Nilsson as well. She was a farm girl, in Sweden, and they have these huge careers because there's far more looking for the talent pool. Because to get her head in, so I did an interview with Vyacheslav Samodurov, you know, the wonderful Mariinsky boy who joined the Royal Ballet, and he said, well, in Russia, every parent, to get, you know, a bigger room, used to put their kids to sports or to ballet and see if it stuck. So the talent pool's huge. That I can't imagine that happening here in the UK.
If I just look at all the Russian artists that I have on my project, for example, the list is much longer than any other nationality. And you know, also when I visited the Russian embassy, I photographed the Russian ambassador as well. I mean, they know every Russian artist here, and they organize events there at the embassy as well for the artists. And I've also spoken to a Russian singer, and she told me that in school or young people are very much encouraged to do some sort of art, you know. So I think it's very important that governments start looking at this, because like you say, you know, there you were as an artist on a building site, but you looked at it in a different way. Your problem solving skills, your sort of self-motivation, how you did it, how you worked. You find that a lot also with dancers, you know, they leave the dance world at the age of 40 or so, and they become successful in whatever they do. But it's this background of, you know, learning to do this arts form that gives you all these skills to go on and do something else as well.
Yes, it's the soul allowed to wander about that an artist has, but then of course you got the discipline, you know. It's
Exactly.
not.
Yeah.
Talking to me, Oliver talked to me about motivation and everything, and because I just said no, I'm motivated. Just get up, hold on to the wall, do ballet bar, practice this, practice that. Then that's it. That's what I do. There is no question. Everyone in the building, because there are some musicians, and they've just said how disciplined. Because I suppose I'm older than them, and I come from. I mean, my ballet teacher, because I did have lessons from a ballerina, including one of the Royal Ballet ballerinas. She was allowed, because she was so good, to do class with the Kirov, with Dudinskaya, she was taught by, and then that was stopped because it was a time Makarova defected, but she was allowed to do that. And she says it's that example of how they are. They're going to art galleries to see how that feeds into. They're reading the novels. How does that feed into that step? How does that? And I do that. Nothing. You never know where I'm going to hang a peg for my knowledge. My German teacher used to say that at Guildhall, that everyone apart from me failed a German exam because they mistranslated Torten as death. And I knew it meant to carry. And she said, how did you know it meant carry? And I said, because in the Lonely Goat Herd, you know, High on a Hill was a Lonely Goat Herd, it said, men on a road with a load to tote, which means they're carrying stuff. And she said, there's you with your peg again. That's how my mind does that naturally. I've never thought, of course, it's because I'm a performer, because I come from a performing background. My father's a country and western singer. So I was on stage with him at variety clubs from the age of 4 or 5. And so I saw all of that going on. And he says, gosh, you took in so much. He said, because when you're on stage and you talk about backstage, he said, do you actually think you're inventing any of it? Because you're talking about people and you remember situations from being, I was about 4 till 7 or 8. Then I went to Southern Choir. And so I've soaked in all that.
Yeah, but that's what I wanted to know from you, is how did you start in your career?
Well,
so you started with your dad?
With my dad. He was country and western was here around municipal centres, and they call them Ponderosa for the evening, and you know they have all the saloon doors, and all these people used to come from work and go in the loos and would change. So they'd come out dressed as cowboys and Indians and cowgirls and squaws, and they would then change their names. So you'd have to call them Mickey and Tex and Running Moonshadow. And they'd go to the bar and it was liquor, and they'd point at a gin and tonic, all of these things. And then, you know, my dad used to do a whole talking thing in an American accent. He's from Wales, but sang divinely, and I was his gimmick. And so we'd be closing the first half and follow. I remember this troupe of all singing, all dancing animal puppets. And I say on stage, this is not true, that they used to have Ernie Emu that used to sing anything you can do, I can do better, while Jemima Giraffe stripped in the background. That's not true. So, but there were telepathy acts and strong men and animals, and this peculiar thing where these mainly women used to stand on these big boulders and then like tit at them with their feet up and down ramps. I remember that as well, being on bills. All of these things, so that's all gone in. Magicians, singers, the whole lot. And that was sort of my life until I went legitimate and joined Southwark Cathedral Choir, where I then started singing classically. But because I'd sung these ballads and yodeled for so many years, my voice was really developed. It was very high, and I was very dramatic. One of the choir men said about me, yours was not the voice of a good boy. It's just that, you know, I never got the nice, easy stuff. But the Marine said this, that he said, when you sing something like Ave Maria or one of those things, which he's heard, he said, you always sound like you're praying and that you're in real need. And that's quite an interesting thing. And I said, but that's all of this from age. I've been on the stage now, I suppose, this year, well, not last year, for 52 years. And seeing all this and working with all these people and learning from people all the time. How are they getting around their word order? You know, that it's a sponge. You've got to be a sponge, I think. And my mother, she's another one. So a lot of my work is based on her. She was an opera singer, but personality didn't really help her, let's just say. And she she thinks she has a psychic gift, and so she did a platform in the second half of my dad and I being on the stage, and she did that. The light is shining here, and the spirit's coming through. And apparently, she passed on to this woman that her father hadn't died of natural causes, that her mother had murdered him. So she had to stop doing that. And she's an incredible personality. And then she also says that because I was such a large baby, I ruined her diaphragm, so she couldn't sing opera anymore. And I just, where has this come from? As my aunt said, you know, she said, really, you've been cast in your own mother's Cinderella complex as the wicked stepmother. And I said, that's very astute, Sophia. So that's another creative thing, because I've got all these elderly Welsh female relatives. So you never have to write your own material when you've got that. You just have to write down what they're saying. You know,
your family sounds fabulous. I love it.
I am so lucky to have them, because I'm quite lazy. I never want to invent anything. I just like to use what they've told me and do.
Oh, that is so wonderful.
I'm very lucky with them.
Really, yeah.
It's so funny. So funny.
I would love to
My
meet
nan
your
once said that she said, I move in and it's a bungalow, but there's upstairs. It's been genius. Only a Welsh person can say that. It's just, yeah. So that's so all the way through, there's always been I tried to do serious concerts when I was out of Guildhall, but if I fluffed anything, I would just stop and talk my way out of it. It's just, and Libby Purvis, the broadcaster, came and said, that is an act. You just trying to talk your way out of mistakes is a stand-up routine, and that's how that show came about. The other half of my show, Galina, because when you do Edinburgh and then they book you for tours, you have to have a double bill if possible, because they have to sell drink in the interval. That's how they obviously they make their profit. So I had to then write a show as a floor, as a sort of my own. I was my own warm-up act, and I always said to my aunt, it's quite schizophrenic because Galina gets more applause than I do. And she said, "Oh, I see." Yeah, so that's and also very interestingly, when I won as Galina, I was in, say, Barbican, which won an Olivier Award, you know, and then I was going to do my play, my first play at the theatre, and told the press department, I was going back to this, I'd been there before, about this thing. They didn't include it. And I said, why didn't you include it? And completely straight-faced, this woman in the marketing department said, you didn't win that award, Madame Galina did. And really? And she still didn't get it. It was as if it was a completely separate person.
Well, but that should actually be a compliment for you, that you are so convincing.
Wow, that's very interesting, because it does convince, because of what I'm, like you said, of projecting. I have had to, because I don't go on point, as you've seen. I have to argue with so many people that have convinced themselves I go on point. They take away whatever they take away. I would say they would quote material I've never done. I'm on point and doing this thing. And in the end, I've just stopped correcting anything, because I thought they paid their money. That's their choice. That's what they think happened. I can't. That's another thing that's come through COVID. Seeing you can't change other people's minds a lot of the time. You have to leave them with what they think is happening. And people do have such a different idea of what's happening, of the same thing. You know, when it's that thing about when people give evidence in court, none of them, they've seen the same thing, but they haven't. They've all seen something different through them, which that's another thing.
That's true, yeah.
Because I'm cluing in my next piece, the thing about if I put myself in mortal danger, I took my friend Anna the Hooligan's thing. She said, write your voice, so base the character on you, because, you know, that's quite fun. And write a thing that's clued, because I'm obsessed with detective fiction and clues and everything. And that's what I've done. And it's to try and get the audience to look at someone else's point of view than this, and convince them that this is happening and this is a reveal here, in a one-man play, which is quite difficult. But it's the prism of what we look through, just from no one thinks the same, I've decided.
But isn't it fascinating, and wouldn't that be also another reason why we should allow more people to study art, or children to study art, so that these audiences that we will have in the future then also will look at art in a different way.
They will. We need to.
Can you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine that now it's the artists, studying the art and creating this art. But really, can you just imagine if somebody who has this background now enjoys the art and can see it in a total different way? That would be amazing.
It's what Walter Legg said, isn't it? The record producer, in a way, without being didactic, you do have to bring your audience with you, and you're an educator. And Kashabin has said that you cannot survive. The arts will not survive without those expert audience members, not practitioners, but those audience members. And I've known a few, and I was dreaded doing the Alba Festival, and you could see them there, thinking, oh God, this has to be good, there, who know exactly what you're supposed to be doing and how it's supposed to be done. You do need that for standards, but also what you said before is that people need to do things for their souls, and the arts have saved the world during COVID. Where have you gone, people, for your comfort? To artists. You've been, you haven't gone and listened to politicians. You haven't gone and done this, that. You've gone to the arts to be uplifted, to be diverted, like we all do. That's, thank God I've got a library card, and the library was open a lot of the time, and so I've been able to lose myself in books, which I do, and virtual tours of galleries online, and fabulous interviews with Muriel Spark. I just watched one of, and all of these people. I would have gone off my rocker without that, and I am a creative person. I need it as so much.
But if you also look at people's natural attraction to art, in the sense that you will see people start painting, even if it just everybody started doing creative things, not just watching art, but also started, or gardening, baking. I think baking and cooking, it falls under, well, it's a craft, but it falls under creating, I heard, for example, here I live quite in the center of Vienna, and there's the Stadtpark here close to us, and there was a mum telling me that the young girls now they got together in lockdown time and sat and knitted in the park. Now, young girls knitting, you don't see that, but yet this happened, and this for me is interesting, is that that most people didn't just watch the art, on television or on their screens, but they actually started creating and making things, and that tells you that it's in us to do that, to be creative, and to and it's a way, almost as if it's a comfort, to do it.
One of the things with Ollie, the builder, his Christmas present, he wanted an exchange. He said, I've taken you building. He said, I want to have a voice lesson from you. I want to know what that's like. And so I gave him a Shakespeare speech, a modern speech, Shakespeare and modern, that I thought he'd like, and took him through how I would work with an actor, and he could keep up. And his face cleared. He just became shiny, and the voice was resonant. And said, that was fabulous. That was like therapy, or going for a massage, or he said, with his girlfriend, he went for a spa day, which he didn't want to do. It was like that. He said, I feel really invigorated by that. And I said, that's what it's like. He said, he is a natural. So people need to. I'm still bothered by Henry and Julia saying to me they stopped because they were told it wasn't going anywhere. It's not meant to. It's meant to go in here.
Exactly.
We're not. You don't pick a violin up just because you're going to become another hi-fit. It's not. You don't go to some nice dance classes because you think you're going to be Lopatkina. That's not how things work.
No.
Yes, we have to recognize what is a Lopatkina, and not just tell everyone, aren't you marvelous? Yes, you should be all over Instagram and all of that, and they shouldn't go and sit in a corner. But it's horses for courses, as we say, and just do it and make an imprint on your soul and make your life better. As you say, with the cognitive skills, it does give you a better cognitive skills.
Yeah,
the arts, and that's
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so much research done now on that, scientific research that shows that the brain of a musician and even with dancing, that it does changes the brain, you know, it shapes the brain. And I just think if we can give that to our children and we can offer that, and you know, that it would be so wonderful for them as well. And I think there are many children who would be able to express themselves better also.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, if I just take myself, I was never good in maths, for example. But in our school, there were opportunities to do drama and singing, but it was always sort of after school, you know, it was. And I think the more we do this in school, saying reducing the hours of art and reducing the you know, the teachers that can teach art, the more we give the message out that art is not that important. And you cannot expect, you know, when children observe this and then they leave school and then they think, yes, but art isn't that important. Or like you say, some people think, I mean, if I can just say, in America, there are children who are very highly talented in music, for example, but they don't go in become musicians because they believe that there's no future for them. Now, how sad is that?
That is so sad. Just run. You've got to run at the wall. I think you do have to run at the wall. When I was younger, you know, at school, obviously I was younger when I was at school, so that's a baroness. We were given piano lessons that wanted and violin lessons. I had violin lessons as part and was lent a violin. And so that's gone. You know, school milk, free school milk went, piano lessons, those things have gone. They need to just bring those back. It was only maybe half an hour of each thing, but it was a fantastic thing to have done.
Yeah.
Really fantastic thing to have done. Yeah, I agree with that.
I believe we have to talk about this and we have to plant the seeds, and that I believe the more artists who talk about this and who, you know, that it is possible. It is possible that the education system can change, and it should. And even if it's because of the pandemic and the situation that the artists find themselves in, and the highlight, you know, that we highlight this problem, that would make people start talking and start thinking that how can we change this, you know?
Yes. Art is the signature of a civilization. That's another thing, isn't it? This Beverly Dale said that, or Voltaire. I can't remember which one. They are underestimated, and people have always said, though, that they're so necessary, but no one listens. You're right. Government needs to listen, and they need to have the statistics in front of them. Look at this pupil who's learned the piano, and look at the skills in all the other places, or all of those, as a guinea pig, just to care. But then we have I hate to say this, but I think I might still be right. I used to do this line as Galena was a serious thing, but Queen Elizabeth has never commissioned an original work of art. If that was certainly true when I just finished Edinburgh, because I looked it up, she has never commissioned an original work of art.
Really?
Yeah. Imagine any of the Tsars and the ladies, and I mean, that's quite astonishing.
Yeah.
And then you look at the Queen of Denmark, you know, it's always just piling around the art. She's wonderful. That's another thing. It needs to come from the message top down.
Yeah.
But the English, I mean, the English where I live, you know, we have a lot of the posh people who come to us with this, and it's just astonishing that what Beecham said, they don't like music, they just like the noise it makes. It's so true. They have no clue when I go and sing for places I love it. They just don't know. And I think, well, that's quite sweet, but why don't they as well? Why
Yeah.
don't they feel that that is something they should know about
Yeah.
as so-called educated? They're not educated because they're not
Yeah.
educated in art. They don't have a reading habit. They don't go to galleries. That's unusual for them to go to galleries to read. The people with the money around here. I
But
do a lot of making them go to things and try to get them to sponsor things as well. I made my rich friends. I raised money for a bursary for an opera singer to study at the Britten Peer School, and I made them give me money for that. There was no way they weren't giving me money for that. I said, it makes the place more interesting. If you want them to come here and rent your houses, and you want them to come in here to Albury and spend time in your restaurants, then we need to make Albury interesting. Albury is not interesting because of sailing and golf. Albury is interesting because of Benjamin Britten and that festival. They're looking at me like I'm nuts, but I still got the money out of them. And then they went to it and they thought, and it's going to catch some of them. It's always going to be, this is when I did pantomime, I did pantomime for Dougie Squires, who's a classic. And his partner, Anthony Johns, said, we have to remember something. A pantomime is going to be a child's first experience of the theatre. We have to make it sheer magic by no sending things off, nothing like that. And, I had to I played a fairy, cross-dressed, obviously. I had to play it straight. I had to choose my most serious female relative to base it on, my mother's mother, because there was I was forbidden to send it. I wouldn't anyway, because I had a singing teacher called Iestyn Edwards, and when I was thrown on at British Youth Opera, because the guy didn't tell anyone he had a contact at Glyndebourne, he was on studying, and the guy went off at Glyndebourne, he sneaked out of the theatre. I had gone, She came because she had another pupil in it, and they'd got the role slightly altered. They'd altered the line or made it Sprechstimme, a bit of this. She called me to the stage door before I went on for the second half and tore me off a strip. Puccini wrote that, you didn't. And then she said this thing. She said, you do not judge your repertoire, you serve it. And that has stayed with me all the time. That it's big. That's another great thing about the arts. We're never going to be good enough. There's always something bigger out there that we can't do. We're never, I'm singing quite well and I'm funny. I'm never going to be Rosa von Sell, and I'm never going to be Uliana Lopatina. No matter how much I think I'm probably the greatest swan queen of my generation in my funny little head. There are always those people that are so much better than you, and you always, come on, I'm never going to write like Le Carré or Goethe. That's never good. All of these skills I have, it's very, very good for you, and to sort of sublimate the ego and all of that, to know you're never going to be good enough. Fontaine used to say that. What a beautiful step. I'll never be able to do it. So that's another very healthy thing. No, you can't do everything. No, you're not marvelous at everything. There are things that don't work. It's life. That's another very important thing about studying arts. You come up against this huge thing that's a mountain to scale. You have to have aspiration. You have to have all that training. That's fabulous, that.
Yeah.
I'm glad I've had all that. Even though it's got mad in the air, it's still there somewhere.
But yeah, you see, this is also what I discovered during this time where I photographed the artists. It's exactly those things, that they have these aspirations, and they have this drive and this ability to just overcome anything just to do it, and the sacrifices also, that the many young artists leave their families behind from Serbia, from Bulgaria, and they come here, and they come and live here, and from Mexico, and it's absolutely for the art, for wanting to do it, and having this passion, and I think it's beautiful, it's wonderful. And I think if we can just give people just a few years of this feeling of, and just what it feels like to really be dedicated to something, to really be dedicated to learn an instrument, or to do this piece of drama or the dancing, then then they have that for the rest of their lives, and then they can also apply that to other things that they do. I think it's a great privilege that artists have to have that mindset, you know.
And we underestimate what having to dedicate yourself to something, whether you want to jump off a building because you can't do it. Of course, we have that sometimes. There's a funny story about my Marine. The only time when I ever thought I can't do this tonight is when I was in Afghanistan and I'd torn my hamstring to 2.5. It was bleeding down the back, and he very helpfully said the back of my leg looked like canary puree. I've never forgotten that. And we were going to a gig, and I'd also not slept, and I'd lost my voice. But on stage, when my music started, I was all right. Then I went back to bed. But this day, I hadn't slept. It was enough. And we were going across the compound. I was already in my costume with my body armor on it. I used to do that. And the Marines are walking with me, and he was up ahead. He always used to walk up ahead like Maria in The Sound of Music. He's going to start singing Do Re Mi. Never walking with us like we're not as important. And I gave up. I stopped walking. I took my body armor off, which was against the rules out there, and I put it down on the floor, sat on it, and said, "No, I'm not doing this." And the Marines were like, and he turned round, and he's a devout Catholic, and he said, "Don't die on my watch. Put your body armor back on. Get up and walk." And then he said this: "Despair is a mortal sin, and your mortal soul already wants a lot of praying for. Move." And I got up, and he said afterwards, "I didn't know if you were going to do what?" And he said, "Then I was looking at you out of my peripheral vision, walking behind me." I was. But that's the only time when I've just thought, I can't get on and do this. I can't. And the one time someone else that said to me, "You go and do it." That still rankles in my head. I feel that I was undisciplined, and the show must go on. What am I doing? But,
well, you're allowed to have one,
just one
moment with a Marine breathing down your neck. That is
exactly with him. Just 6'2". He's 6'2". He's baby face, blue of eye, but he is rocky as from. Talk of shouting. You've never heard anyone shout. He does that parade drill. Oh, you can hear him across. You can hear him across like fields because it's got that now. I study his natural progression for singing. There were two of them. I have to watch what they did, and this is out. Nothing here because and it's because they need to. This is another thing. The arts, to perform something properly, you have to find out what the need is. What is the need to put this across? And the need that they have to bellow their instructions to the boys is that they're keeping the boys safe and doing what they're meant to do. That is their need, so that technical things don't get in their way, because they have to. You move. That's another fascinating thing that I took on board from them. But that's why their voices work. They need to put across that information that loudly as a sideline. It's need. We need to express as people. We know this. We need to express.
Well, I'm going to use that line again when I shout at my children.
Good. Good. I've helped. You should use all of that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
He is a very wise person. It's just, does it have to be so loud? I said to him.
Like my daughter said, when we lived in England and we lived in a semi-detached house, and then we moved to a detached house, not just I would say a normal house.
Yeah.
Because I come from South Africa, so for us it's normal to have just a house on one piece of land. But anyway, as we moved into the house, she said, "Oh, Mum, you must be happy because now you can scream and shout without the neighbors hearing."
Good. Whereabouts in South Africa are you from?
Well, I grew up in a little town, in an industrial town, Van der Bijl Park, and that's near Johannesburg. Yeah.
Okay. I love South Africa. I adored I had a month in Cape Town at the comedy festival performing.
Really?
And I adored it. I cried coming home. I was heartbroken coming home from that.
Really?
I found it, and we had comedians. There was a Joburg comedian called Chris Forrest who brought his car down, so he drove me around everywhere that I needed. It's the most beautiful place.
Yeah.
I loved it.
It's a lovely country. Yeah. It is. But Iestyn, tell me, what is your wish for when this is all over?
very interesting. I need to get over my fear of opera. I need to really just get that done. There's something there that needs to be done. To share as much as possible. And also I've been watching things, and I think to admit that I have only one way of looking at the world, and that's my way, and that is my way, and that is enough. That is enough. That I've always sort of denigrate my own way of looking at things and think, oh, that's wrong, I need to do that. Technical things always need to be improved, but one's view of the world, you can't. That's you, that's me. And to have the bravery, as my singing teacher says, he says your speaking voice is as it is because you've been taught to run away from yourself by your parents. Like, that's very interesting. And he said you need to have the bravery to allow your singing voice. That's my immediate thing, is the bravery to allow my singing voice, whatever that means. But that's what I'm doing. Yeah, I think that is what it is.
Yeah, wish. Yeah, I think, and as I say, I do believe this time of isolation almost gives us or gives maybe artists a chance to do that, you know, to come in themselves and say, this is me, this is what I have to offer. I don't have to be like everybody else. And I mean, yeah, I think that's a wonderful time to get
it
that.
Is, as Oliver said, Oliver's girlfriend's mother wants to speak to me more, and she said, because he did this, and Oliver said, I'll say to you about Iestyn, and he came out with a brilliant quote, said, he is strange in the best possible way.
Oh, okay.
I think that's brilliant. Strange in the best possible way. And to share that, it's what Quentin Crisp does, that wonderful Quentin Crisp. He does a wonderful talk where he tells people, you have to find out what you have to offer. Only you have this to offer. And you have to find out what it is and only work with that.
Yeah.
And you know,
I truly believe that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
that's what COVID has taught me. I've never quite articulated that in my mind. Now I just think, this is what I have. This is it.
But you know, it takes a lot of courage to do that, and especially in this time period that we live, where we have the social media, and there's so many. I find sometimes there's so many rules that social media sort of also want to mold people into this idea. This is how you have to do it. This is how you have to run Instagram. This is how you have to run Facebook. And you don't have to, you know, and then already there, if you can do your own thing, I think that's great. And in life and in many things, if you can get to that point where you think, do you know what, this is how I do it. And you know, I mean, I'm not talking about disobeying the law, but I'm saying in an artistic way, you know, that is, look, this is what I'm doing. And I think that's brave.
It is. And it's also, it's what Oscar Wilde said. He said, be yourself, everyone else is taken.
Yeah.
And Maria Callas, because she was so straight-jacketed, she said, by learning the score, exactly what was written, that then allowed whatever was in there to emerge and swamp her performances. Because if you sit there with because you know she's supposed to be the most creative and off the cuff and everything. A friend of mine who used to, he's died now, but he used to come and get his program from me in the opera house as a writer. He watched her in Iphigenia, in the storm scene where she's running, panicking. He said, she's apparently running, panicking. You thought that? I started to notice that she got to exactly the same step in the flight of stairs on exactly the same high note every night. That is, but that's her releasing this internal thing, because she's so straitjacketed by these. So we have to be straitjacketed by technique.
Yeah.
And when that's fully there, I think that's when this is fighting to get out, because your trill has to be on the right note. You know, it's that kind of, your soul is going to fight against that. And I think that's probably the dichotomy is what makes an artist interesting.
Yeah.
Look at the passion that people don't want to recognize in Jane Austen, because it's so, her stuff is bleak and barren, a lot of it, but it's so informed. That's another thing I've been studying. Well, forms of things and how people then break out of them. What makes someone different?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Artists training.
Yeah.
That's what makes them different.
That's true. But Iestyn, this was so lovely to talk to you.
So much.
I'm so glad that we got to. Thanks for social media. We got to know each other.
No.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased. I just searched for what I always look at. Matthew Ball's such an interesting performer that I looked at what he's done next and saw this. I want to be interviewed, and then contacted you, and then followed you, and you found me. I mean, that's good.
It's amazing. Yeah, my daughter trained with Matthew at the Royal Ballet School, and this is how I knew him. Yeah, and yeah, so this was so lovely to talk to him too. So I knew him since he was a baby. Well, baby, since he was a baby in ballet. Yeah,
really, he does have a brain. On going to the galleries and reading the books and the music, he does do the whole that I was taught to do by my ballet teacher Stella Bedard, who was an ex-ballerina, got injured. She, even for a joke act, I still had to, the clowning bit, because it's a clown act, it has to be right, and he has the same approach. Look at the galleries, read the book. I love hearing him say all that. It's very good, that one.
And so that's good. That Matthew brought us together.
He did. He's very he's very pleased with himself.
Iestyn, I hope whenever you visit Vienna, will you please write to me? Do you ever come this way?
Definitely. I've never been, but there are two places I so want to go. Florence and Vienna are the two, and I've never been.
So come to Vienna. Please.
I will. I'll come to Vienna. I'll come and try and do my book show there, and I'll come.
Yes, and then please write to me. I would so love to meet you in person.
Thank you. I will. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hurrah! And thank you for this.
No, I thank you and for your time and your wonderful insight. Yeah, it was so interesting to talk to you.
You too. Thank you.
And you don't mind if I post this on YouTube?
You can post whatever, because you've got such an easy flow out of me, which doesn't usually happen. So yes, please.
Oh, is it?
It's important.
No, but I like it.
The arts are so important. The arts are vital, and we proved that for the college.
You know, I try to keep these interviews as informal as possible, because I think it has to be real, because I see the artists, you know, and also the photographs that I took, I keep real. I don't edit anything. And I think, I keep it as I take it, as they give it to me. And I don't even close. If there's a hole in the wall, I don't edit the hole in the wall. I keep it as real as possible. So I feel it's important that we see it now in this time like this. And like I say, these conversations are just as they are, you know?
Yeah, brilliant. Yes, that's perfect. Perfect with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And I shall see you in Vienna. I'll come to Vienna.
Yes, soon. Okay. Have a lovely evening.
You
Thank
too.
You.
Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.